I've not been feeling so well. So let me share my screen so that we can start today's class. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so all right, so let me start by introducing myself. I know that some people are already familiar with it because I took the first UX design class. My name is Rihanna, and welcome to today's class. So today we'll be talking about, okay, so today our focus for today will be design principles. Though I feel like more of it would look abstract, but I really do not like teaching in abstract. So we'll go ahead to look at some companies' design principles after the whole class today, and you can just write your questions down and all. So these are the list of things that we'll be looking at today. The focus primarily is design principles. So we'll be looking at what are design principles, the universal versus the specific design principles. Why do you need design principles? When should you write design principles? And how do you write design principles? Then also we'll look at some proven design principles, like we'll look at a particular sector, what the tone of the design principle should look like. So we'll be picking the fintech sector because I think that is what the projects we'll be working on would cover. So that will talk about what the tone of a fintech design principle should be. So if you should start with what are design principles? If you should start with what are design principles? I don't know if you've heard of a design principle before, but I would say that design principles are rules that will help guide you and your team while making important decisions. So whether they are universal, they are specific to your project or product, they have the power to unify all the collaborators. So what design principle does is set a values that act as a compass of your product, like what everybody on your team agreed on. Like you all agreed on, okay, this is how our design should be, this is how our product should be. More like a guideline that would guide everyone on the team. And the reason why design principle is called, like they call design principle an agreed upon truth, because as a UX designer, you are not the only one that come up with the design principles. It's more like a collaborative effort of all stakeholders, like everyone agreed on a particular principle. Like, okay, this is the principle that we want our product to be. Like it's like it should be specific. Should it be specific? Should it be actionable? Like all these things are what you guys are what everyone on the team would look at before you start working. So that is just what design principles are. If you have any question, please, you can just let me know. And if I'm going too fast, please let me know. So in short, design principles are just like rules that guide everyone on the team. Like, okay, this is what our product should look like. This is the tone that it should have. This is what it should be. Should it be based on prioritization? Should it be actionable? Should it be specific? Like all these things are what make up a design principle. So now we have universal versus specific design principles. Now, as a UX designer, you should have something at the back of your mind that we have general laws. There are general laws of design. And these laws are universal. They are what's okay as a designer, as a UX designer, this is what should guide you. It doesn't mean that these laws are rigid. No, they should be flexible. And if you want to use was it not 2 weeks ago? I don't know if you've noticed something on Twitter iOS app. The bottom nav now has 6 bottom nav plus the normal floating button, making 7. Now, looking at it, there is a law that guides it that users tend to be overwhelmed when they are exposed to too much of actions at the same time. But if you should see, Twitter did not actually consider that. They went, how can I say it? They went offline, like off the particular universal principle, because they have their own specific design principles. In as much as it is in line with their goals, it is in line with their business goals. So universal doesn't mean that it can be changed. It can be changed, but it just means that it is a general laws of design that will make you be specific and will make you design a product that would be intuitive for users to use. Now, when we are now talking about, if you are talking about specific design principles, now specific design principles means that you are designing a product for that particular product. Like it is not general. You are building it, you have the principle specifically for your product to guide all your actions, to guide everything that will be happening throughout the product cycle, throughout the design process, right? So that's a specific design principles. And the reason why it is good to have a specific design principles is because you have your own actions, you have your own listed goals, you have how you want your own product to behave. You want it to be like a guideline that would help everybody on the team, not only the design team. We are looking at everyone, both the tech and the non-tech employees, right? And these specific design principles will give you an overview of, okay, fine, we have a universal design principle, but having your own would be like, that is what you want to follow. You don't really want to, not like you will not follow the universal, but having your own makes it have your own ownership of your own principle. Like you have the ownership of your products. You are the one that knows how your users are, what your users are experiencing, what you want the design to solve, what you want the product to solve. So it shouldn't be good if you are building a product without a design principle. So I will say that this bring your user experience vision to life, right? Specific design principles brings your vision to life, your user experience vision to life, because it will have a unique, that is the unique to your mission. You have your mission and your mission is unique. You have your goals, what you want to achieve, it is unique. Companies like IBM, like Adobe, like Google, like Facebook, they have their own specified design principles. Does that mean that they won't follow the normal general laws of design? No, they would, but then their own specific design principles help to keep them in shape and in a way that they would know what to do, and anyone that wants to join their team would have something to read on about their principles. So now, why do you need design principles? Design principles help you establish the values of your products and make decisions that uphold the integrities of those values. According to Daniel Miranda also, he said that design principles keep the research alive long after that phase is over. It is just like a design process. A design process is iterative, right? More like a design principles too. Design principles too are iterative, because for every point you look at, okay, it is not going to be fixed. You can all go back there to iterate on it if it is not going in line with your mission. And if new team members and stakeholders come into the project, let's say months or years after the research was done, the design principles would help them to ensure the original intentions and the needs of the users are documented. Do you get? Like, these principles, even if you have a new team, if you have new stakeholder, they can always go back to that document to read what the research, what the design principle is all about. And if we are looking at this particular diagram, based on what I've said, right? Design principles are formed with team, like everyone on the team come together. It's not like they are doing your job for you, no, but you cannot single-handedly say that this is what the design principle of the company or the products we are building will be. It has to be a collaborative effort of stakeholders, both developers, everyone, the content writer, everyone that will be on the team. But without design principles mean that you just come up with something, right? And I feel like as a UX designer, you can change the narrative of where you are working. Design principles shouldn't just be a single person's work. Everyone needs to come together to agree on what the principle should be. But without design principle, it will even lead to back and forth, because what we all agreed on, G gets, is collaborative efforts. We all agreed on this. There won't be, we won't be wasting time. But let's assume I am the only one that come up with a design principle. I will have to sit I will have to sit everyone up, call a meeting to present what the design principle. We'll still get to that part where we look at how a design principle should look like, so that it won't be abstract. So I would just say that if you are the only one that come up with a design principle, you have to sit or have a meeting with all the stakeholders to explain your thoughts, to explain what's the design principles. And at that point, they would have to have one or two changes, gets, which will bring about back and forth. And as that, it says you are actually wasting time. So why not just come together? Why not come together to have a single thought, to have a single mission? So far, we all have a particular mission. We all have the value, even though you are the one with the research part, right? But then bringing it together with developers, the content writers, all the stakeholders agreeing on a particular principle would go a long way. And now, if you are to look at who uses a design principle, right? Organizations, individuals, product teams, everyone benefits from writing a design principles. And on this page, I made reference to some companies and their design principles, which we'll actually take a look at. We'll look at how they write their own design principles and how it varies from product to product. If product A has what is it called? If a particular product company has their principle, a design principle, just because it is a fintech doesn't mean that it will be the same, but they might actually have some few principles to share, but their mission is different. So of course, their design principles might be different. So Airbnb has their own design principles, IBM, Facebook, Google, name it, all these companies, they have their own design principles. And I'd say that it makes their work a bit stressful, because if they hire a new person, now they wouldn't want to, start having an onboarding session where they will be explaining the design principles. But if they have a documentation of their design principles, that would be easy for them to, refer the new team or the stakeholders to that document. And that person would have an overview of the research that they've done and what the product design principle is all about. You get just a document that would explain what all this is all about. And please, am I moving too fast? Am I moving too fast? Please, you can just drop a comment. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm moving too fast, sir.
All right, thank you. Okay, so that's now boils all down to when to write design principles. I know that the question that would come to your mind is, when am I to write design principles? If you are following a human-centered design methodology, you will start with research, right? That is what the methodology is all about. You have to get to know your users. You have to gather some data to know what their needs, what their pain points, what it is like, what they are expecting, what they want to see. You have to empathize with them if you are using human-centered design methodology. Now, at this point, design principles are often formed after this phase, which means after the research phase, after getting to know more about your user, what they want, what they need, which is after the research phase. You are to form, like, that is the phase where you can form your design principles, because you have to know the implications of how those insights would look. You already know how they feel. You already know how it will sound to your end user. So moving forward, it will have to be like, you can think of this as moving from the concept phase to the build phase. Like, okay, from concept, you want to move to the build phase. That is where you start with your design principles. And just like the design process itself, your principles will probably go through multiple iterations, which means it is not just going to be a one-time thing, like I said earlier. And if you start early with the awareness that you'll be saving lots and lots of drafts, like, you are starting your design principles early, not when you start building. That is when you want to start with your design principles. Let everyone agree on what the design principles should be. That way, it will guide everyone, it will guide your process moving forward. But if you start building, like you moved on to, okay, the building phase before you now set up a design principles, you have to do like, it will just be like a waste of time, because what is actually guiding your design? You start building without a principle. Someone said she can't see my screen, or what?
I can't see your screen too.
Oh my. I thought, sorry.
I can see it. Oh, I can see it very clear.
Ha. Okay, please, if you can't see my screen, just drop a comment. Okay. Or maybe you should join, leave and join if you can't see my screen. Okay. Okay, so I think we should continue. Okay, because during this design principles, you get to ask a lot of questions. Like, a lot of questions would come in. You don't want to start building without knowing what the foundation of your design should be as a UX designer, right? A lot of questions would come in, like, content writers would ask their own questions, developers, like all stakeholders. And that is where you will all agree on a single truth on how you want it to be like. Where I work, before I move on to the design phase, right? I happen to be the only designer, right? But before I move to the design phase, I try to ensure that all stakeholders, including the CEO, everyone agreed on a particular design principle. Like, we have a document that guides that. Even if you have a new team tomorrow, what the person will have to do is just go through that document and look at our research, look at the documents, look at our documentation, go to design principles. And I would say that design principles is actually part of a design system. And because design system is more like a broad system, and it comes together with your value, your mission, everything that is going on, the tokens, like everything that is going on with that product. So design principles is actually part of it, which means that so far you have a documentation that has your research and everything. Your design principles too should be part of the documentation. And okay, that is all about when to write the design principles. So to rephrase it, or to, let me say, to cap it again, I would say that design principles will come after the research phase, after knowing how your users are feeling, after empathizing with them, after looking at what after looking at what you are of, like what you want to do to improve on your existing or the new product that you want to come up with. Okay, how do you write a design principles? To write a design principle, you have to start by blocking off time with your team to facilitate a conversation, which means you just finished your research, right? You want to start bringing your thoughts together. You want to share data with your team. You have a data to back up your research, right? And this is where you'll be able to, as a UX designer, you have to facilitate this conversation, because you have the research to, you've done the research and you have the data to back everything you want to share up. So this phase means that everyone wants to look at what lessons did we learn from this, from the research that you've done. What can we use to counter our hypothesis, right? How do we want our users to feel? You want to ask all these questions. All these things would be what will help you in writing your design principles. You know the lessons that you learned when you are carrying out your research. You already know how your users are feeling. You know how you want your design to be perceived. How do you want them to perceive your design? And in another point of view, right, if you have to onboard a new teammate, let's say next month or anytime, it will be like an important things for them to know. Also, it's more like the things, like what are the things that are unique to your users, like that can't be ignored when it comes to design. You are not the only one. Fine, you are the one facilitating this particular conversation, but you have to all come together to make an agreement. And you can always counter the agreement if you have data to back it up. Because the truth is, even while you are trying to agree on a particular design principles, and as I said, it is iterative. It is more like your design process that even after, when you are done with, even when you are done with the main launch, you still have to keep iterating and iterating, getting feedback to iterate. And as you are getting feedback, as you are doing more research, as you are getting to know your users, so is your design principles will be influenced. Because if you change the mission of your product today, or if you change it from B2B, from being business focused to customer focused, your design principles will change. It won't have the same design principles. So as you go around and share, you will likely notice a good amount of agreement, which is a great place to start, which means that everyone is agreeing on a particular principle. We all have a principle. Instead of you having to do it on your own, then call for a meeting to present all this, to actually be like a waste of time. So that is why there is need to make sure your specific design principles meet the criteria of being actionable. You really need to have your own specific design principles. We have a lot of general design principles, But what makes your own product differ from all this is you having your own specific, what you really want, the tone, and how you want your own product to behave. So, making it simple, one of the general laws, of one of the general or universal principle is make it simple, right? But make it simple isn't a great specific design principle. Why do you want to make it simple? So like for me, for 3 reasons, it is missing the why. Even if the general principle says that make it simple, why should I make it simple? Why does this specifically matter to your audience? Like, you really need to know why you need to make it simple. But just because the general principle says that make it simple doesn't mean that your design principle should also state that. You need to know the why does my design, why does it have to be simple? If it is in line with if it is in line with your product mission, if it is in line with now your research that you've done will determine whether it will be simple or not. So you have to keep it at the back of your mind to always counter even general principle. That's why I said that general principle doesn't have to be rigid. It has to be flexible. It can go your own way in as much as you have data to back it up. Like, I don't really have to follow this. Look at what Twitter does. Gate, like, they even went their own way to, even though how can I say, as a designer, I looked at it as users will feel too overwhelmed seeing 6 bottom navs and a floating button, which means they have 7 actions to perform at that particular point, like at the bottom nav. But you know what? They have their own specific design principles to follow. So that is for the missing the why. Then no one is going to argue with you that the product should actually be extremely complicated. You are actually discussing this with your team. Even though I have another thing against what Twitter did for their mobile app, for their iOS mobile app, but I'm not going to argue with them. They know that this is in line with their business goals. They know that it is in line with what they are doing, right? But no one is going to argue with you that it should actually be extremely complicated. Then your teammates will know how to make a decision based on needs. If you don't have a specific design principle, it is not actionable. I see it as it is not actionable, because how do you want your teammates to know what decision to make? If the principle should include prioritization, like, do you want to prioritize this feature? Like, how do you want the criteria to be? How do you want to evaluate it if a new feature should join, like if you should add a new feature to the app? Do you get? So I feel like having a specific design principle goes a really long way. And after your research, ensure that you come up with a draft, like a documentation, even if it is just going to be like a one-time meeting with everyone. Have a solid design principle. This will help you to know the tone of your design. Are we going simple? Are we going extremely complicated? Are we doing this? Do you get? Like, you are not making the decision based on your own notion. Like, you are not being biased. Everyone will come together to make the single decision. So I think we should, examples of design principles, maybe we should just check like 3 website, 3 products, and look at how they come up with their own design principles and how it differs from one another. So let's look at IBM. Are you still hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Okay, before we
Yes, we
move
have.
to IBM principles, please, I would like to welcome question if you have any, before we actually move into all these principles, so that you see how these companies come up with their own principles. Please, if you have any question, please feel free to ask before I move forward. Do you have any question?
Hello. Can you hear me? I have a question to ask.
Hello.
Yeah,
Okay,
hello. Can you
yes, I'm
hear
with
me?
you. Yes, I'm with you.
All right. Please, can you make a bit of clarity between design principle and design system? Are they the same
Okay.
thing, or is there something
No, no, no,
different?
no, 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 no. No, they are different, like different. I would say that design principle is part of a design system, right? Can you see IBM's page? Can you see this screen that I am currently? Because that is what I want to use to explain your question.
Yeah, I can
If
see that.
Okay, now, if you look at this particular IBM's page, right? This is more like their design language, which comprises of everything. Now, design system is more like a single source of truth that would how can I say it? That would have to do with your principles, your typography, your color, your tokens. Like, I want to try and explain a design system checklist for you, so that you like, it is your design language, it comprises of your design tokens, it comprises of your core components, your tooling, project management, everything that you would use to build your products. Meanwhile, principles are parts of design language, and design language is part of your design system. Do you get? So do you get it, Ife?
Yeah. Of course I
So
do.
principles is like under like your design systems. So is what would guide and what like a truth, like a document that would explain what your design should actually be. Let's take a look at IBM principles, right? If a new person should join their team and should just look at their principles, mere looking at it means that I want to read everything that has to do with IBM's design, like how IBM's design is formed. That's what I want to know, even as a non-designers on the team. So they carefully stated what their principles are. And looking at it, I think, okay, they only have 4 principles, which means like the uniquely unified. You can just take your time to read how they come up with their own design principles and what they actually touch, what they want their design to communicate, how they want it to communicate, how they want it to be, how they want the tone to be. So here they are looking at, can an experience be improved? If so, keep exploring. Like they actually touch every core things that has to do with their designs. So from here, as a new team or as a stakeholder, or even if you are not part of the team, but you want to know how IBM designs work, reading their principles will give you like an overview on how they form their design and what are the things that guide their decision making. Do you get? This is for IBM design principles. So it is, as a designer, as a UX designer, it is your job to, you can make research on different companies, different products. Look at how they write their own principles. Use it to form your own principles. Meanwhile, while doing that, you don't have to copy their own principle because they have their own goals. So your principles will be formed based on the research that you've done and based on your own mission, based on your own company mission. But you have to know that principles doesn't have to be a long note, doesn't have to be a very long note or a long document. If you should look at these spectrum principles, they only have, their own is just, yes, their own is just 3. Their own is just 3 principles: rationale, iman, and focused. And they put it also in actions. IBM did not actually explain their own principles in actions, but Spectrum explained their own in action. In action, in the sense that when they talk about rationale, what does this have to do with for all platforms, for everyone, and transparent? Like they touch each and every one of every of their principles one after the other. For focused, like, okay, how do you want this to influence your design decision? That is for Spectrum. And for Atlassian, I think they also have 3 principles or 4. Yeah, they also have 4 principles. And they also explained it in actions. Looking at this is their own design system. And design principles are part of their design system, like I explained earlier, that design principles are actually part of a design system, because it's supposed to be the first thing that you're supposed to do before you can even come up with your components, before you can come up with a template, before, like, it has to be in line with your values and your mission. So looking at them, they said that our design principles reflect our design philosophy and how our digital experiences unleash the potential in anything. So if you are working with them and you read their design principles, you already know how they want their design to behave, the philosophy behind their design. Do they want to keep it simple, or they want it to be complicated? Now, this is left. Do they want to build trust in every interaction? Now, one of their design principle is build trust in every interaction. They all come together to agree that they want to build trust in every interaction, which means if you are using their products, they want to gain your trust. And also they want to build a design that will connect people to collaborate better. Do you get? And that is what their platform is all about. So you have to know what your platform or what your product is all about before you come up with a design principle. Is it a collaborative platform? Is it a fintech platform where you know that, okay, you must earn people's trust? And I came up with few things, if you want to, like few things that you can actually look into if you want to come up with a design principle for a fintech product, which is the next slide. So you can just go through all these people, look at their design principles, look at their product as a user, and read their design principles. You would connect with it. You'll be able to connect with their design principle. Okay, their product is mainly to collaborate, to let people collaborate. And one of their design principles is to connect people to collaborate better, right? Is one of their design principles. And also to build trust in every interaction, like that. So they have like 4 to 5 design principles. So it shouldn't be something that will be too lengthy. It's just to guide everything that you'll be building and everything that you'll be designing as a designer. Sorry. So I came up with some proven design principles for your fintech. Let's say you want to build a fintech, or you are working with a fintech company and you want to what is it called? You want to have a solid design principles. Everyone wants to come together. What are the things that you actually need to look at or look into as a designer and non-designer? You should know that for fintech is known to be a sector with complex data, right? You know that they would always have this complex data, whether it is a blockchain or any type of fintech related company. They always have this complex data. But what do you want your own as a company? What are your own principles? How do you want to solve this? You want to ensure that you simplify the complex data. So I just came up with some principles actually that as a fintech company, you people can come together to look at and actually use as your own principle. We all know that because of simple data actually represents simple data help users to consume, reflect, and decide what type of product they may need to invest in. You don't want to build a platform that will be too complex with data, which means you are telling your user that all this data are complex, but we can simplify it for you. That can be one of your design principles, to be able to simplify complex data. And we also have avoid information clutter, which means too much of anything will be overwhelming, right? Just because you have a lot of data to showcase your user doesn't mean that you have to put everything in front of them. It will be too overwhelming, because no digital platform with too much information has ever been soothing to eyes. If I should log in to any digital platform and I discover that you have too much of information, I'll be overwhelmed and I will just log out and use another platform, because there are other platforms that won't actually overwhelm me with information. So too much information has always led to confusion. And if they lead to confusion, you should know that it will increase dropout rates, right? There will be a lot of dropout rates, and something we don't want new or deciding customers. Like, we really do not want our new customers to be faced with too much of information. So building a fintech product means that if you are coming with your own principle, you must come up with a principle that would avoid information clutter. Like, your design should avoid information clutter. We also have the maintain transparency. I want to keep my money. I want to invest in your platform. I want to save my money. I want to do all that, right? How will I trust you? How will I know that this particular fintech platform is actually true? You want to maintain transparency, which is very, very important. In fintech, pick out the important and helpful information and provide it to your customers for their benefits. that is what you should do. You don't have to, making the content simple. It's very important. Like, ensure that this thing is, like, all the information are transparent. If I should make a withdrawal, let me say that a withdrawal is made. You don't have to show me an alert like 30 minutes after. Or if someone, except it is, let's say, a technical or an engineering issue, right? But all these things, even if it is an engineering issue, you are not the only one that comes up with your design principles, right? Which means for you to come up with all these principles, your engineers to know that your platform wants to maintain transparency. You want to ensure that if customers use our products, we can actually, oh my God. Hey, please, who else is not hearing me clearly?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, so back to, I don't know, maybe you should just leave and join if you can't hear me clearly. So for you to come up with a design principle, you know that everyone on the team are actually involved. Like, everybody pick or drop their own take when it comes to principle. So whether it is going to be engineering issue or content writer issue or any kind of issue, you should know that everyone is maintaining transparency, and from their own part, design part would ensure that their design is depicting transparency. Engineering too, from their own end, would know that, okay, everything we want to do would actually indicate transparency. You don't want them to use your platform or make a withdrawal, and in few hours they are just getting alerts, or someone send me money and in few hours and I'm just getting it. You get what is wrong with you being transparent with all the information that you are actually showing me, and the choice of words that you are also using too, which is the part of a UX writer. You get all these things should actually come together all these things will come together to form your design principles. So that is for fintech. Those are just the few things for fintech to look at. Okay, implement easy use of accessibility rather. Whether it is fintech or any type of how can I say it, any sector, it doesn't really matter if it is fintech. I believe that all products should be accessible, right? But the reason why fintech should actually have the ease of accessibility is it has to do with money. And coming up with a design principle for a fintech is, in fact, I see it as important than every other sector, because you want to deal with people money, and people are always impatient when it comes to their money, right? So the type of principle that you want to come up with for your fintech company has to do with something that would make people trust your brand. You want to ensure that it is accessible. Anytime people want to have access to their money, it is accessible. They have access to the withdraw feature. They have access to make it transfer. They have access to logging into the platform every time. So all these things are what you should actually come together to agree on. Are we making our platform accessible? Everyone will give their take. You have your own research and data to back it up. Do you want it to be easy to use? Yes, of course. You have data to back it up based on what the existing users or your potential users are saying, or the research that you carried out. You have data to back it up. You can show it to them like, okay, these are what our users are saying. When I interview them, these are the data that you gathered, right? These are the information, these are their pain points. All these things will help you to come up with your own design principles. That is why specific design principle is always better than the general. Fine, the general can just wait, maybe when you want to make a design decision on your button, on your interface, all those ones are just the basic general design principles. But having your own means that this is what we want our design. You are the one, like, your design principles would determine if you want to display a lot of data, if you want to display a lot of features on your own page, you know how your product wants to behave, you know what your users are facing, you know their pain points. You know how your design would actually solve all these pain points. You know how you want to bring a good and intuitive experience to your user with your design principles. And if anyone should join your team, or let's say you leave the team and they hire a new designer, they don't really have to go, and maybe the new designer will now have to start looking around, try to facilitate a new meeting with no documentation, right? But if you have this, you can even make it public. If you have your own design system, just like all these big brands make their own public, right? You can make it public on your website, so that as a user, even if I haven't used your what is it called? If I haven't used your platform, I can always go there to just go and read about your design principles or something, right? And that is what IBM and all these people are doing. You can always make reference to their own as a designer. And also as a user, you can see and read more about their design principle. So you can make it public. Though there are some things that you can't make public, but not like design principles. You can make your design principles public on your platform. Let people have access to what your tone, what the type of principles you are building, the type of designs you are building, the principles that are backing it up. Like, you have a direction where you have a principles. But if you don't have a principle, everyone would keep arguing and going back and forth on a particular product. And I would say that design principles are your own principles, right? It's principles very widely. They can be broad and inspiring. They can be specific and guiding, and they can be simple and obvious. They are unique in their own ways. And the most important thing is they should reflect your culture, and they must be useful to your team. Design principles must reflect your culture. They must reflect the research that you've done, and it must be useful to all team, whether designers or non-designers. So if you want to come up with your own, we make reference to others. Try and look at how they come up with their own design principles. You can check the Facebook has its own, Google and all these Airbnb, they all have their own design principles. And that is what would differentiate a standard or a well-formed company from just a company that is following the general principle. Because I don't see, even if you are going lean, if you are just starting a company, or you want to have a particular product, or you are the only designer, whatever the case may be, you have to have a design principle. And if you don't have this, how do you want you and other team to be in sync? That means you move from just your research phase to just the build phase. There is no point where everyone comes together to agree on this is how we want the design to be, right? It's fine, you facilitate it, but you hear their own opinion. You can't just decide that you want the design to be simple. How? What if you start designing and at the long run, one of the stakeholders just said, no, this is just too basic. We need to go all the way out, right? We need to follow the mission. And all these people really know more about their mission. They know more about how they want it to look like. So that is all about design principles, when to come up with design principles, what your design principles should look like, and who are the people that should be in the design principle team. I don't know if you have any question for me. I would like to welcome any form of question at this stage. If you have anything, let me know before we.
All right. Good morning. Good morning, Ma.
Yeah, good morning.
All right. So I want you to clarify. Do you ask if you are designing for a fintech company like the example you gave now?
Mm-hmm.
So you ask them for what they would want to have, then you form your principle based on what they've told you already.
You mean what
Like,
the
yeah,
stakeholders
what the
want to have,
company,
like
yes, what they
the
want to have.
company, what the company wants to have. Then
Yes,
you form it as a designer, right?
yes.
Okay, so I believe that all companies have their own mission, like their own business goals. If they have a product requirement document, which is a PRD, that will show their goals, their business goals, what they want to achieve. And as a designer, you already made your own research. You've had a session with your users. You know their pain points. You've drafted everything out. Facilitate a meeting, right? A meeting that would involve everyone, like all stakeholders. Tell them that you are not the one that will just come up with the principles. Everyone, you can be the one to write the documents, right? You'll be the one to come up with the documentation, of course, because it is part of your thing. It is your work. But you are not the one to form the principles. Everyone would form the principles based on the research and your mission. You have your research, and the research says that a lot of people are having issue with making withdrawals, right? A lot of people are having issues with making withdrawals, and let's say 70% or 50%. You should know that the principles that you want to come up with for you, and let's say you don't have a principle before, or you have a principle and you want to iterate your principles, right? You should know that this data would help you to know the type of principles that you want to come up with, and everyone will collaboratively come up with principles, not only you. Do you get? You have data, everyone will come up with it, like everyone would agree on it, right? Okay, this is what we want. We want our design to be intuitive, right? In what sense? In what action? Are you getting it? We want it to be simple and obvious. Okay, in what sense? In what actions? We want it to be specific, or we want it to be broad. In what sense and in what actions? Do you get? So if we all come together, if they say that, okay, we want it to be broad, what are you like? Ensure you ask a lot of questions, because this will help you to write your documents, your design your principles documents, rather, your design principles documents, sorry. Because if you don't actually ask a lot of questions and they just tell you that, okay, they want it to be broad, your own is you just write something. But if you all come in agreement and understand what the term broad is when it comes to your product, what the term specific is when it comes to your product, what the term accessibility is when it comes to your product, easy to use when it comes to your product, do you get? Then you, based on what everyone has said, you will now have to come up with a document that you will now share. Do you get it?
Yes, I did. I do. Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you have any other question?
Good morning.
Yep. Good morning.
Okay,
Hello.
I have a question.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hey. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, my question is, assuming a company has more than one product,
Yes.
so this specific design principle for the company, is it going to be a general one for any product the company has or decide to build in future? Or is the design principle going to be specific to each of the products?
Okay, so I will answer your question in two ways, right? IBM has several products, but they have single design principle, which means it will guide. They want, if I should use one of their products, they want me to have the same experience if I should use another product. Do you get? It's supposed to be like a single source of truth, like one single document that would guide, even if you want to have 10 products, but under one company, right? Except if it is, let me say, if it is, I don't want to say an agency, if it is a company that has fintech, that has B2B, that has SaaS products, they are not following the same pattern of products. They have it across different industry. Do you get it? Like different sectors. That is where you will know that, okay, each sector, each of them would have their own. But in as much as it is the same industry, right? The same sector, but different products. Let's say for marketing, right? but you have different products. Your company is under marketing. It's a marketing tech company, but you have different products. You will know that you have only one principles, like one design system that would guide everything you want to do, and one of the principles that will guide everything you want to do. Do you get it?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Any question? Does that mean there is no question? Like you all get what I? Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay. Good morning. Yeah, my question is, is design system the same thing as design principles, or is there any difference between it? Yeah.
Oh, of course, there is a difference between principles are under design system, but design system is broad. Like I explained it earlier, like design system is broad because it comprises of your style guide, your components, your design tokens, your project management, your design language, your principle, and design principle is part of your design system, right? So design system is more like the parents, while others will just come underneath, where you have your design principles, you have your tokens, you have your design language, your vision, your terminology, your writing guidelines. Design system is broad, very broad. Your how can I say it? Your components, when it comes to your design tokens, it's what type of color, your accessibility, everything, typography, that is design system. But principles are parts of your design language, and design language is under design system. Do you get? Do you get it? Or you want me to go over it?
Yeah, very well. So that means design principle is just a subset of design system then.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so what would you advise when starting up a project or building a product? The first approach, is it to build a design system or to just build a design principle and start the project for companies or product managers that they are too eager for their product to be out?
Okay, so I will start with saying that design system is iterative, just like the way. So you can't finish building your, only if you have a specialized design system person. Do you get, like a person that is in charge of your design system? So it is hard to just build a design system at once first before you start building. So you populate your design system as your, that is how I do as I am building. G gates. But there are some things that I must do before I even start building. Those are my design principles. In fact, we need to come up with our design principles, because that would help me to know how, like the kind of practice that we want to go, like what is the tone that we want our product to be. Do you get? So I would suggest that for a company that is too eager to push their product out, ensure you have your design principles, everyone aligned on a single design principle, and have basic things that will guide you in working. Then start. You can keep on populating. You can keep on populating your design system as you're going, but start with your principle first. Know your vision, then the tone of voice of your products. Those three things are important. Even if they want to rush into building their products, right? You need to know the tone of voice. You need to know their design principles. You need to know their vision, right? Before you now think of, okay, as a UX designer, you can now move on to the next phase. And sometimes, because you're a UX designer, it is, let me say, in Nigeria, you have to be a mix of both. UX UI designer. But if you are fortunate to be in a standardized company, right? In a standard company, rather, you don't really need to bother yourself about coming up with a design system. But all of you will come together to agree on principles, or if they have an existing principle. But if you are the only one and it's a startup, just do those three and start building.
Okay, thank you very much. Lastly, can a UX designer also function as a UX technical writer? Because, like you mentioned earlier, in Nigeria here, one person is foreman. We do a lot of things. So,
Yeah.
is it advisable for a UX designer to acquire the skills of a UX technical writer as well, or function as a UX technical writer?
Actually, you are not to function as that, but if you have the skill, you can do it. I don't write. My own is I will just tell you, provide me with a UX writer. I will work together with a UX writer, and you would know. I will explain what the product, what I want, the tone that I want each section to give, and you come up with the write-up for me. So normally you are not to be a technical writer, UX technical writer. But if you have the skill, if you acquire the skill, then of course you can do it. But if you don't, primarily you are not supposed to be a UX technical writer. But then you should have a writing skill as a UX designer. Do you get? Writing skill is important. It might not be for a product, but for documentation. But you are not, it won't, but in this country, you have to do the two.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Do we have any other thing before we call it a day? Do we have any other thing? Is there anything you want to ask? Please feel free before we call it a day. Okay, I think we are all good then. Let me share. I don't know if you want to make reference to this. I can share this. I don't want to stop sharing. I want to share the Figma file. Okay. Should I drop it here or on Slack? Okay. Oh, someone has, is principle of design and design principle the same? Are they two different terms? I think the person left. Oh, the person left. Okay, so
Okay,
I just shared. Okay.
okay, yeah. So I had an experience working with a UX technical writer.
Okay.
So I just want to ask this question. Eh, Is it a job of a UX designer or a UX technical writer to come up with error messages, or the work of the developer?
No,
Which of these three has that job role?
the developer is even out of it. You cannot leave an error message to a developer. They can just give, oh, sorry, G-get. In fact, you even need to specify it, like where you even want it to be for developers, like specify it for them, G-get. So anything that has to do with interface, even though it has to be collaborative efforts, right? You don't have to leave it to them. You have to decide what you want it to be. So as a UX designer, you come up with error message, but your UX writer would fine-tune that thing to make it sound better. Do you get it?
Okay, so in
So
my
I can just
experience,
write story. Okay, go on.
in my experience, the UX character happens to depend on the developers to provide the error messages
No,
for him, and he
no.
was trying to prove a point that it does not even know what error the application is going to throw at that point, and it was proving a point that it has to be the developer. So the more reason why I'm asking that question.
No. That's why I said that. It has to be a collaborative effort, right? For every design process, everything, like all your design process, you must ensure that your engineers are there, like you collaborate with them. Fine, there are some technical errors, like there are some technical things that you may not know, but they will have to, explain this and what are the errors that this part will throw. Do you get? Ask them questions, ask them technical questions. Okay, at this point, what are the errors that this thing can throw from your own perspective? What are the errors that users can see from your perspective? So they will not tell you, okay, if they should do this, they will see this error. And I believe that if you have your product requirement documents well detailed, this would even guide you as a designer to know the type of error that a particular feature will throw, even without without having to meet with engineers. But meeting with engineers means you guys want to be in sync. They know what is happening at the back end, right? You are only designing the interface and the experience, but they will tell you what they are doing at the back end. So that would determine the type of things that you would like, the error that you would show or that you would display. So it is not their job at all. It is not even their job. So it's the work of a UX designer and a writer to write a good, like something interactive that will make them feel human. Do you get? So a UX writer will do that.
Yeah, very well. So this is very personal now, like a personal question to you.
Okay.
Don't mind it, I'm coming up with different questions. I just want to get clarification.
It's fine.
Okay. So how do you get to handle this kind of scenario when a UX designer or a UI UX designer gets to ask some silly, in quotes, silly questions that from developers, and developers feel that you're a tech guy, you should understand this better. So developers tend to see those questions as very silly questions. So you personally, how do you handle communication with developers or with your engineers that make your work to be very seamless?
Okay, where I worked so far in, there's one thing that I've embraced when I started as a designer is to ensure that I carry and I be in sync with my developers from the beginning, from the research phase. Believe me, there is no, even if I want to make a decision, a design decision, right? I will make the decision and I will still ask them from technical point of view, what do you think? See, I know that probably designers have this ego of, after all, I'm in charge of design. But believe me, you cannot achieve this alone, right? So what I do from my own point of view is I carry them along, like I communicate with them. I share things. I share design, what is it called? Design, what is it called? My design decisions with them, why I make this from the research phase. In fact, there was even a point that when I was doing a particular research, right, I invited the lead engineer to be an observer. When I was doing my usability testing, the remote usability testing, right, I invited the lead engineer and two interns to come, or two developer interns to come on board. And they helped me with documentation. They could actually see from their own point of view how the person is interacting with it. So I don't leave them alone. Like, I make them feel like this thing, we are in it together. We want to achieve a single, like, we want to achieve the same goal. We have the same mission, not a different mission. So
Yes.
So we have please mute yourself. So we have the same mission, we have the same goals, and I would let them come on board and see what's up. Like, this is what is happening. I won't let it be like when I want to start designing, and we now bring them on board. So collaboration with collaborating with developers as a designer is important. And please ask questions too. I know that sometimes they will feel like these questions are too dumb. Yes, ask it. Especially when you're starting out. Ask them a lot of questions. Like a lot. They will even some of them will even suggest. They will even give you some suggestions that you as a designer, you are not even looking at that perspective. But from engineering points of view, they will give you that suggestions and would actually help you when you want to make a design decision. Is that clear? I don't know if that is clear.
Yeah, very well. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Linda, are you raising your hand? Do you want to ask something before we call it a day? Okay. At this point, I think, okay. So at this point, I think I'm done for today. We have to meet next time. So what I would just, before I go, please, I would like everyone to come up with a design, how can I say it? A design principle for a fintech product. Just come up with something. I just want to see how you want to come up with. I just want to see how you want to come up with a design principle and how that would guide you for real. Like, just go online, check fintech products that are public, right? Come up with design principles. Look at what they have in common. You can just look at what they have in common to come up with your own. So far, there is no product mission and vision, right? We don't have a mission, right? Look at what they have in common and use that to come up with a design principle. Check different fintech products out there. Check their design. Most of them always have design page, right? Check their design page. There should be a principle. They should have a principle. Like, check it. It is not necessarily it should be a Nigerian fintech. Like, go international. Go to just check. I don't know if Stripe has. Check Stripe. Check Wise. Check all those fintech companies. Look at their design principles. Look at what they have in common. Document it and write it in a Google Doc. Submit it by next Wednesday. I will share a Google form that you can submit it. But if you have any question, you can just reach me on Slack. So I'll be available to answer that. Thank you so much, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here today. Feel free to reach out to me on Slack. And the task too, I'll be expecting it next week. Have a lovely day, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that.
All right. Thank you. Bye.